Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ika Vat. Ishiba Shigeru begins his leadership of Japan during what he has called the country's most severe and complex environment since World War II. Before his election, Ishiba called for an Asian NATO and its sharing of US nuclear weapons to deter China in a Hudson Institute piece. And as Chinese nationalists are found to be behind a disinformation campaign for Okinawan independence to amplify the narrative of an unresolved Okinawa, how will Ishiba unite and strengthen his country? And does it mean bringing any policy change to relations with China, the US or Taiwan? Joining us today are Kuo Yu-jen, National Yat-sen University Institute of China and Asia Pacific Studies Professor and Director, and Mathieu Duchâtel, Institut Montaigne Resident Senior Fellow and Director of International Studies. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show today. So let's hear from Japan's new leader himself.
我が国を取り巻く安全保障環境は戦後最も厳しいものだと認識をいたしております。国家安全保障戦略に基づき、平和を守るための抑止力の強化、防衛力の抜本強化に取り組んでまいります。
So, Mathieu, if we can start with you first, let's discuss or let's explain the vision that Ishiba has for an Asian NATO.
Well, his vision for an Asian NATO is exposed in this Hudson Institute piece, and when you read it, there are clearly three different moving parts. I think the first one is really build something on what already exists, and what already exists is the web of US alliances in the region, with Japan, with the ROK, with the Philippines, the Quad, AUKUS, and he also mentions the existing web of security cooperation that Japan has with a number of countries, including European countries, but also India. The second part is the sharing nuclear deterrence element, and here Japan is facing the change of nuclear posture by China and investments by North Korea in its nuclear deterrence capacity. So here what Ishiba is asking is related to the military balance and maintaining nuclear deterrence in East Asia. And finally, the third part is his comparison between the US-Japan alliance and the US-UK alliance. And here there are many differences, clearly. The UK military is involved globally. It's part of the Five Eyes intelligence sharing alliance. That's not what Ishiba means. He means more independence for Japan in the US-Japan alliance dynamic, and he's speaking of an alliance dynamic between normal countries.
Okay, so let's drill down to each of these three components. Professor Guo, for Ishiba, he has said in the Hudson Institute piece that Ukraine today is Asia tomorrow. So basically, he is reflecting Kishida's comments, which some people had doubted. He said, replacing Russia with China and Ukraine with Taiwan, it is essential to have an Asian version of NATO to deter China by its Western allies. What sort of reaction have this idea of an Asian NATO have from the US? The US and India have come out and said, absolutely not.
I believe Prime Minister Ishiba will have to compromise to security reality or reality of regional international politics sooner or later. And now to talk about Asian NATO again in the near future. The reason is actually very simple. The major problem to have an Asian NATO is Japan itself. Because of the Constitution, Article 9, Japan is not allowed to form this binding obligation kind of security treaty with other countries.
So does this mean that he wants to push for a change to Article 9?
Exactly. As we all know, constitutional amendment for Japan is almost like, it's more than difficult. If you read the Article 106, the proceeding of constitutional amendment is almost like a mission impossible.
Right.
You need more than 2/3 from the upper house and the Diet. It is not like presentation of 2/3. It's the overall, the total number of Diet members of 2/3. Yeah. And then after you have the absolute majority, you need to give it to referendum. And post-war Japan have never had even once referendum experience at all.
Right.
So even politicians, leaders like late Prime Minister Abe, that kind of political capacity, he could even, dare to push for the bill.
And it's interesting, Professor, because people are calling Ishiba anti-Abe. They're calling him a dove. And yes, what you're saying is he's actually seeking something much further than Abe did.
Exactly. And not only because of Japanese constitution. In order to form this, the purpose to form this Asian NATO is to prevent large-scale war. And as we all know, there are two hotspots in East Asia. One is at Korean Peninsula, the other is at Taiwan Strait. If you are not including, if you don't plan to include Taiwan into this multilateral security, collective security platform, that platform itself is nothing, meaningless. So unless Prime Minister Ishiba plan to have diplomatic recognition with Taiwan, otherwise this Asian NATO is meaningless. And then as for more equal stance for U.S.
Let's go into that a little bit later.
Please.
Let's go to the nuclear weapons that Mathieu mentioned. So, Mathieu, when you read the Hudson Institute piece, it's very clear that there's an argument that's being made there by Ishiba. So he is essentially arguing that there does need to be a complete change to the global system. And he, obviously, we just quoted Ukraine, but he also, as you mentioned, talked about Russia and North Korea's and also China's threat. These are nuclear powers and their strategic partnerships. So can you explain further the rationale and the reasoning behind taking what seems to be at first an incredibly drastic step of sharing US nuclear weapons in the region?
Well, to me, the key sentence, and it was actually repeated by Ishiba when he gave his policy speech to the Diet earlier in October, the failure of deterrence in Ukraine is apparently really the core element of his thinking regarding national security and defense issues in East Asia. The risk that nuclear weapon states use their nuclear weapons to facilitate a conventional war is something we've been discussing since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. This is something that is being discussed in the context of the Korean Peninsula, but also in the context of the Taiwan Strait. And I think that for a long time, the deterrence discussion related to East Asia has been focused very much on missile defense and also on anti-submarine warfare to, in fact, deny China and the DPRK the capacity to engage in such offensive behaviors. But more and more, given the change of posture of China in the nuclear domain and given the progress of North Korea in that area too, I think the thinking is evolving towards the importance of reaching deterrence through additional nuclear capacities and not only through defensive measures. So I think it connects very much to many discussions that are taking place in the US at the moment.
But what would be the US reaction to this suggestion?
Well, it's, as Professor Kuo said, I think there are a lot of constraints that Ishiba will be facing when he pushes this agenda. And already when you compare the policy speech he gave at the Diet to the article that was published by the Hudson Institute, this element has disappeared. My personal hunch is that he will work towards those objectives, but mentioning them less clearly should be what we should be expecting from him, I think, going forward.
Okay. Professor Kuo, let's turn now to the relationship between the US and Japan. As you mentioned, he wants to bring it onto a more equal footing, and he actually said that in the Hudson Institute, so he might revise that position now. He said it's my mission to raise the alliance between our two countries to the level of the US-UK alliance. What is it that's special about that alliance, and why does he want to emulate that?
Number one, of course, Prime Minister Ishiba is aiming to revise or renegotiate with the states on SOFA, the status of U.S. forces agreement. And that, again, it's more than difficult to do that because, again, it's a problem of Japan's self-imposed and self-constrained kind of measure from its Article 9 of Japanese Constitution. And there's no reason to believe, because it's been too many times, previous prime ministers, even the Prime Minister Abe also tried to negotiate so far with President Trump. And the reason why is almost like impossible because of renegotiation of SOFA. Basically, you are involving into American domestic politics. It requires the U.S. congressional approval to revise any single wording on that SOFA. So if you look at the current status of American politics, still very chaotic presidential election, that's not, you know.
So what's your personal view of him writing that article just before, you know, the election was called?
I think he's this year he's 67 years old and been pursuing prime ministership for more than 40 years. I think he has his own idea, his dreams, but when it comes to realize becoming real, the Prime Minister of Japan, he has to face a lot of reality and pressures. And again, this is just an idea to make U.S.-Japan alliance more equal ground. But the step one to renegotiate SOFA is almost like mission impossible at current American politics situation. And as Matthew mentioned, even this nuclear share idea, you know, President Yoon of South Korea got turned down by President Biden last year when he visited D.C. last May.
He was saying he wanted his own nuclear weapons, though, wasn't it?
No, the Korean thinking is to either to develop their own nuclear weapon or to have nuclear weapon sharing with the U.S. And the situation of Prime Minister Ishiba, I think a lot of people is not clear about that. His position is in between. February 27th of 2022, 3 days after the outbreak of Ukrainian war, there was the Prime Minister Abe on television emphasizing the reason for Ukrainian war because Ukraine abandoned nuclear weapon. So Japan should seriously consider to talk about nuclear weapon sharing with the U.S. So a couple of days later, March 1st, Prime Minister Kishida formally denied the possibility for Japan to have any nuclear weapon sharing with the states. So Prime Minister Ishiba standing is in between. He want to talk about nuclear decision and operation negotiation with the United States, but not nuclear weapon.
Okay, so Mathieu, do you think that you know, Ishiba can still be the dove whilst advocating for these measures because he is pushing for deterrence, which will enable peace?
Yeah, I think that deterrence is really at the very core of his thinking, and it's going to be a priority of his prime ministership. I think he's been called a dove because of positions he took in the past regarding diplomacy with China, and I think he will try and find a balance between being very firm and robust on deterrence efforts and national defense spending, but that on the other hand he's been quoted many times as saying that communication channels are extremely important with the Chinese side, and that the China-Japan relationship should not be based only on the military balance.
So taking a leaf out of Biden's administration's book, which is there needs to be intense diplomacy as well.
Yes, I think it dovetails nicely with that kind of approach, but it doesn't mean that the military deterrence approach will be abandoned. I think it's going to be very central to his prime ministership. And the other thing is regarding the Yasukuni Shrine. I think sometimes the comments he made in the past have led him to be considered a dove, but we have to remember that the last time a prime minister of Japan went to the Yasukuni Shrine in exercise was in 2013.
Okay. Now, in June 2023, Xi Jinping visited the Chinese National Archives and was briefed on the Ming Dynasty's treatment of the Senkaku or Diaoyu Islands. Xi then reportedly said that when he was working in Fuzhou, Fujian province, he learned of the deep roots of exchanges with the Ryukyu Islands. An investigation by the Nikkei has found that since 2023, videos featuring phrases like Ryukyu belongs to China, not Japan, and according to the Potsdam Declaration, Ryukyu is Chinese territory in Chinese subtitles have been circulating widely. There were also posts spreading false information that Okinawa was to be renamed Ryukyu. Matthew, if I could ask you very quickly, is there any basis for China claiming Okinawa?
No, there's no basis at all in international law. We need to be very clear about that. There is a history of tributary relations between the Ryukyu Kingdom and the Ming Dynasty, and then the Qing Dynasty, but a tributary relationship has never been a base for sovereignty claim, clearly not. There is the other question of whether China would at some point support pro-independence forces in Okinawa, but that's not about a Chinese sovereignty claim over Okinawa.
Right, but that might be an advantageous position for China, Professor Kuo. If it was independent of Japan, then it would be a lot weaker.
No, I do not think so. If China really going to support the independence of Okinawa, meaning China is playing a very, very dangerous game with the United States, because as we all know, 1952, when the US government ended the military occupation of Japan, still maintained military governance at Okinawa. It was not until December of 1971 it's because of, between 1952 to 1971, that almost 20 years, Okinawa was trust territory from UN to the United States. So December 1971, it was United States government's decision to return full sovereignty of Okinawa back to Japan. So if China really pushing for independence of Okinawa, then the status of Okinawa, based on international law, will go back to the United States. And number two, I believe that's not the true intention of Chinese government.
Okay.
It is, they try to make trouble of US forces stationing on Okinawa.
What is their campaign aiming to do? What is the end goal? Is it trying to whip up, so discontent about those US bases?
That will be the ideal result, the best result for China, to promote more protest from Okinawan people and go against US forces stationing on Okinawa, and then to decrease the number, to decrease the military assets on those islands. Right. That will be the best result of it.
Yeah.
Because US forces on Okinawa is not just the possible reaction from US forces alone. The US forces reaction will trigger how Japan and Japanese self-defense forces to do when Taiwan contingency. So that's the nightmare for Chinese POA.
Right, so they want to build on the current, there is some discontent there by locals because of those bases which have been there for decades.
Yes.
Now, on September 25th, Japanese destroyer Sazanami passed through the Taiwan Strait for the first time, accompanied by New Zealand and Australian warships on their way to Philippine exercises in the South China Sea. Just 2 weeks earlier, Germany sailed 2 vessels through the Taiwan Strait for the first time in 2 decades. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson had this to say.
台湾问题事关中国的主权和领土完整， 事关中日关系的政治基础，是不可逾越的红线。针对日本自卫队舰艇进入台湾海峡活动，中国军队已依法依规予以处置。
So, Mathieu, the basis of their complaint is that Taiwan, they say, belongs to the PRC and that those waters in the Taiwan Strait are internal waters. Is there any basis to that?
Yes, it's a new narrative that has emerged in China around 2019. There has been clearly a political decision made in Beijing to politicize transit by foreign navies in the Taiwan Straits. And I think that's why the Japanese transit is important, because in addition, as you mentioned, to the transit by a number of foreign navies in the Taiwan Strait, there is a need to invalidate this Chinese narrative. But the view seems to be that the Taiwan Strait is too narrow for high seas and that the waters inside the Taiwan Strait have to be considered as territorial sea, contiguous zone, and exclusive economic zone. And since in the Chinese view, Taiwan is part of China, there is an EEZ in the Taiwan Strait that belongs to China.
But an EEZ is also international waters, right? In fact, the only thing that is actual sovereign waters is the 12 nautical miles off the coast.
Yes, I fully agree with this view. So whatever way you look at it, it's very important to constantly make the case that the Taiwan Strait has to be open for international navigation by foreign navies.
Yeah, so Professor Kuo, whether or not you believe Taiwan is part of China, there would still be international waters between Taiwan and China.
Yes.
But it was the first time for Japan. Why now?
First reason is very simple, because it was a couple of days before Prime Minister Kishida stepped down. So it is actually a very good timing for Prime Minister Kishida to realize his own promises when he just elected October 1st of 2021.
But why on his departure? Why not earlier on?
Because he was trying to set example for his successors later. No country within this region sending their naval vessel passing through. So I believe Prime Minister Kishida is also setting example for the countries within this region, especially South Korea. Because as we all know, Japan and South Korea, those two countries actually use Taiwan Strait the most country in the world, using them as the major channel to provide energy and also raw materials to Japan and South Korea. So we are expecting, when Prime Minister Kishida set this example, South Korean president will follow due to send Korean naval vessel to pass.
Wow, okay, so watch this space. On August 14th, when Kishida Fumio announced his decision to step down, Ishiba was in Taiwan. He met with Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te to discuss, quote, how democracies could cooperate to boost their cumulative deterrence capabilities. Now, Nakatani Jen, who is now Ishiba's defense minister, was also at the meeting. Ishiba has repeated Abe Shinzo's stance that a Taiwan emergency is a Japanese emergency. On August 26th, a Chinese reconnaissance aircraft violated the airspace in Nagasaki Prefecture. On September 12th, 2 Russian military aircraft flew around Japan. On September 18th, the Chinese Navy's aircraft carrier Liaoning sailed into Japan's contiguous zone around Okinawan Islands. That was the 1931 anniversary of Japan's invasion of China's northeast, and coincidentally, the same day, a Japanese schoolboy was stabbed by an unemployed Chinese national in Shenzhen. On September 23rd, a Russian reconnaissance aircraft violated Japanese airspace 3 times, prompting the Japanese to scramble fighter jets and deploy flares. Mathieu, the reason why we reeled off all those incidents is because a Japanese analyst has said that these were triggered precisely by Kishida's announcements to step down, as well as Ishiba's visit to Taiwan. How much do you agree with that statement?
Well, I think that we need to step back a little bit and remember that former Prime Minister Abe really changed Japan's software when it comes to Taiwan Strait contingencies. And what we've been seeing over a period of 10 years is Japan gradually taking steps to signal to the Chinese side that Japan is part of the deterrence equation in the Taiwan Strait, and that is meant to affect the Chinese strategic calculation when they decide or not to initiate a crisis in the Taiwan Strait. And I think that this policy is obviously not cost-free. It comes with cost. It comes with some degree of Chinese retaliation. It comes with, at each step, a Chinese response. And what we have discussed about Okinawa is part of that response.
Professor Kuo, final question. So given that, what can we expect from Beijing during Ishiba's premiership, and to what extent do you think China will be at all successful in pressuring Ishiba?
The problem is under current Sino-Japanese relations, especially those military relations you just mentioned, and Xi Jinping's ambitious military plan surrounding China. I do not see this future perspective of Sino-Japanese relation will go toward a positive direction at all.
So you think it will get much worse?
It will, because that's the problem and trouble China has been making for the past more than 10 years. Yeah.
Okay, we have to end it there. Thank you so much, Kuo Yu-jen and Mathieu Duchâtel, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.